This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're casting your spell, Artcasters. Casting your spell. Ooh, you're gonna cast that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa! Ooh. Hi, 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 hi.
All right, welcome to Artcasters. Our new lovely intro sung by Axl Rose. And if you guys want to find out more about Axl, check out Jim Lujan's animations. All right, guys. So first episode after 400. We're into the 401, which is exciting. I'm excited we have a returning guest today. Let's talk about a new project, and that's going to be really exciting. So before we get into that, let's just make the rounds and introduce ourselves. You're on my channel, so if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notifications if you're enjoying this show as it goes. Hit that like button. And also check out Two Stories or Jacob's Apartment, my two graphic novels. Let's see. Corey, where can everybody find your work?
You can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. And got a Substack going on there. And I'm going to be doing some educational videos here on YouTube soon. So if you're interested in the components of what makes up an image, then stay tuned for some of those things.
Nice. Sounds like some pretty rad reverse engineering, which Corey is an expert on teaching, which is really cool. And also, you guys should be subscribed to Corey on YouTube. He's been doing live paints live, which is pretty cool. All right, Scott, where can people find your work?
You can find my work at you can find the videos and stuff I'm doing on my YouTube channel. Just search Circworks on YouTube, where I'm reverse engineering classic nostalgia products, ephemera, novelties from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, kind of putting my own spin on it. And then I've got a backlog of all kinds of videos on making comics and things, including my Making Comics 101 series. That's free, most comprehensive course you'll find for free pretty much anywhere on Making Comics, and it's on my YouTube channel. I also have a website, circworks.com, where I have my comic, Young and the Dead, Kids vs. Zombie Adventure Story, which I just finished the inks on the final page of the latest and last issue. So now it's on the shading and lettering, and then and I still have to do the cover. But besides that, it's coming along, so it's getting there.
That's really exciting. Years in the making. So make sure you guys are following Scott. And if you guys haven't picked up the first issues of Young and the Dead, now's a good time. You can catch up with it before we're all because once it's out, all of us are going to be talking about it. So be a part of that conversation. Go get those books from Scott's site. All right, our returning guest, my friend, a brilliant cartoonist, Javier Hernandez. How's it going, Jav?
Hey, very good. And happy anniversary, guys. 400 issues. 400 episodes is nothing to take lightly. So glad to be coming here on the 401st. So working our way to 500 now.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Last year I just celebrated my 25th anniversary of publishing comics starting in 98.
Oh, that's awesome.
25 is a nice number, but then when I saw 400, okay, that's solid gold right there, man.
The 25th
I'll be very impressed when you hit your 400th year anniversary of publishing comics. So
yeah, that's true.
That would be way more impressive than our 400 episodes.
I will be the darling of the science world for sure.
Right, yeah.
I like the 25th anniversary branding that you did, Hav, and the banners and stuff, and the boxes that you had, like the box collections and stuff, is really cool. What you've done to kind of show showcase like that. Amazing
You
stuff.
know, and this is for all of the comic creators, especially the younger ones. I mean, I grew up on classic comics, and it was always a big thing. I'm sure it still is now, but it was always such a big thing, like, you know, 10th anniversary or 50th anniversary issue, the 50th or 100th issue, whatever.
Yeah.
So when I started making comics, like that was always in the back of my head. Like I think when I hit my 10th anniversary, I did a 10th anniversary logo, and then I did something for the 20th. So I'm very conscious of like it's branding, right? It's celebrating, but it's also getting people's attention. Like, oh, this guy's been around. I haven't heard of this guy, or oh, congratulations. So you know, I'm already thinking. I'm not designing it, but there'll be one for the 30th, and then God willing, I mean, Corey mentioned 400 years, but 50th anniversary would be to me like, okay, just health wise, that'd be beautiful to get to that. So we'll see. It's all about every day doing something though. So and then looking back at what you accomplished.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that idea of like kind of both celebrating and also using it as an opportunity to kind of promote. I think that's a really, really good tip, actually, for those of you out there. Watch, we're going to have like half of our audience be like, first anniversary. It's like, no, not that far.
Hey, you know, good for them that they marked the, you know, 1 year of doing whatever they're doing. That's good. And then but get to that 5.
Yeah,
get to that first
agreed.
5, and then hit the 10, and then figure out however you want to do them from there.
Yeah, and hopefully we can all kind of hit that like that 25th of our own. I mean, that's an accomplishment.
Wow.
I was thinking it's funny what Hal was saying about like, oh, it'll have like a special 200th issue and everything, but I'm wondering if that's still a thing, because nowadays it seems like they just reboot everything because they know number one sell, and they just keep rebooting things. So I don't know if comics go up that high anymore.
Indie comics do.
Do they?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You know what they do, Scott, though? Like, I know Spider-Man, like, yeah, they'll reboot it every time the new writer comes about. So it's up to, like, issue 5. But then they look at the calendar like, oh, it's going to be the 700th issue of Spider-Man. So then they'll go back to the legacy lettering for that for that special month.
Yeah,
I remember they
did number 5.
Yeah, I remember they did that with Superman, and they just changed the name of the title to like Adventures or something of Superman, and then had a Superman number 1. But then they continued with the other title that they changed the name. They continued the. So I
think that's the first time they did that. You're right, where they just switched the name of it, and then now it's ridiculous. It's like Spider-Man number 1 is every 3 months. Like, okay,
yeah. Spider-Man, even when I was a kid, was like one of the worst offenders with that. Where it's like I followed like Web of Spider-Man, which was probably the worst series of all of them to follow, but I loved it. And then you had Amazing Spider-Man, you had Spider-Man, and then you had like Spectacular Spider-Man. Like all of those came out, but I do remember a lot of those issues, because quite often they'd also be like a giant size edition, which was always really cool. So it's like, not only would it be like whatever anniversary, but it'd be like, oh, I'm going to get like 40 extra pages or something. I love that. So Hav, you have a Kickstarter up right now, which everybody should go support. And when we were talking about kind of what we were going to talk about for this episode, you were kind of discussing influences and what kind of influenced your art, and particularly relating to this new El Muerto, Manga Muerto, and it is somehow in kind of relation to IPs and existing IPs as well. And so so I was going to start it off by saying, why don't we dive into like kind of a little bit about Manga Muerto? So like what inspired or influenced Manga Muerto? And maybe I guess we should probably, before that, just do a quick rundown for anybody who might not have heard of like El Muerto, which I'm sure most of our audience has, but why don't we start there? Like, so El Muerto, what is El Muerto, and how did that evolve into Manga Muerto?
Yeah, I was trying to find a copy of Muerto, but yeah, El Muerto is the series I started off with 26 years ago now. It's a superhero adventure, supernatural comic, you know, about this young man. He's born on Day of the Dead. On his 21st birthday, he gets killed in a car accident. He ends up in Aztec land of the dead, and then he gets resurrected. comes back a year later as El Muerto the Aztec Zombie. Combination of like the old classic Spider-Man angst, maybe a little bit of Madman comics, some Hellboy thrown in. Tim Burton. I've been telling people lately at shows, because it seems to work, because they may not be comic fans, very comic knowledgeable. I go, hey, look, if you're a fan of Tim Burton movies and say maybe The Cure and The Smiths, it's in that ballpark as far as superheroes. And it really catches their eye. It's like, oh, okay. So I got the Hot Topic crowd, I think, covered pretty good with that. So I was doing El Muerto comics, and then early on I wanted to do, and we'll definitely get more into this stuff. I was always been a big fan of Gigantor. The original Japanese is Techigen 28.
Yes.
It's the classic boy with the giant robot, which we got over here as the animated series when they brought it over to America in English in the 60s. So I like the idea, right? The guy with the robot, the giant robot. And it's like, well, I don't want to make up a whole new character. I go, why don't I just get El Muerto and then reconfigure him as this other character who I now call Manga Muerto. Originally, Manga Muerto was just like my placeholder name as I'm looking at the concept. Because, it's like, okay, it's manga. It's El Muerto. So I'll use that silly thing just for myself. And the more I thought about Manga Muerto for months and months, throwing in my head, I go, I like the way it sounds. I like the Japanese Spanish of it.
Yeah.
So I go, well, the book's called Manga Muerto. So I wanted to do a story. Yeah. So basically it's El Muerto as a Mexican high school kid. He's in Japan as a foreign exchange student, which is funny because that's like Fez from that 70s show. And then if you know about Wilmer Valderrama, he played El Muerto in the El Muerto movie. But anyway, I don't want to get all convoluted right off the top. That's usually at the 45-minute mark. I watched this show. And he's in Japan, and then he just happens to get control of this giant robot Skeletron. So it was a 4-page story, the first one I did back in, I think, 2000. And then I did another one, 2001, a longer story. I teamed up with another friend of mine. The first one was inked by my friend Rafael Navarro of Sonobulo fame. Again, another huge giant robot fan and comic fan and girl college mates. And the second story, I teamed up with a friend of mine, I think Josh remembers him, Ted Secco. Ted had his own characters at the time, a character called Skyman. I go, hey, Ted, let's do a team-up. Manga Muerto and Skyman team-up. So then me and Ted collaborated on that story. And then, 10 years later, whatever, 8 years later, I did the last Manga Muerto story, at least the last one I've done since. And that one I did on my own. I just penciled the ink it myself. So that's what it is, and that's what the Kickstarter is. I'm collecting the 3 stories in this nice square-bound book. I've done a collection of these, with a stapled floppy. But I go, let's do a more permanent edition, and then this will always be on Amazon. And it collects the 3 stories and some extra stuff. There's a pinup gallery in the back, and I tell people this is always great for all ages. It's for kids, the material's all ages. The regular Muerto story, I would say, is at least high school, college.
Yeah.
Up. It's nothing super graphic, but it's about a guy who gets his heart ripped out by the god of death. So right off the top, you got a pretty violent, bloody scene in the origin story. But Manga Muerto is just pure fun, right? Giant robot fighting other giant robots, fighting kaiju, giant monsters, whatever, space stories, stuff like that. So that's what this collection is, Manga Muerto, the perfect collection.
I love it. Let's just show the Kickstarter real quick, and then we'll get further into the topic too. So here it is. Here's Manga Muerto, and then it definitely looks like the cover is just really nice. I love the type as well.
Thank you.
And then here's just some examples of what I was just talking about.
Yeah, the various monsters. So there's the first story right there. That's inked by Rafael Navarro.
Yeah.
And then the second one coming up is inked by Ted Secco. So they have just a little different look.
Yeah, Ted's style's like real loose and very high action. And then Raph is just like, I don't know. It's hard to explain Raph's style. He's just badass. His style's so good.
very precise, very slick
Yeah.
inking.
Yeah, so clean.
Whereas Ted's is more rougher, more organic, which I think is probably a little more in line with mine, with my penciling.
And
then the final one is that's me inking my own pencils.
I love it.
But I have a couple of great reward levels. One of the reward levels is right there, the original art. Which I have right here to prove it.
I love it.
I got the original back cover art.
Oh, let's show it.
Drew.
Nice.
And then I got the original illustration for the front cover art. So those are both available to purchase along with the book. And I also did a level where folks can check this out. You can get the Manga Muerto book, and from my own personal library, you can get an original Japanese Techigen 28 manga.
Oh, cool.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, this is a 10-volume set that I had for years, and I bought a new set, like a larger version. So I go, well, let me put these up so people can get the book, and then for an extra $10, they can get an original. This is from the 90s, I think, the reprint. Original Japanese manga. So it's a pretty cool set if you want to really get into giant robots and such.
That's
great.
So
we've got a question from the chat.
Oh, good.
And I don't know if you want to answer this, if it's a spoiler, but yeah, does the character make a deal with the devil to collect souls? What's his purpose after being reborn?
Yeah, good question. So this is the classic manga storyline. Yeah, he's abducted by the actual Aztec god of death, Mictlantecutli. And then he's abducted by two gods, the god of death, the god of destiny. And Diego doesn't know why they abducted him. Well, the god of death wanted an avatar on Earth, right? Like a reaper of souls, but the other god kind of did something different to him. So when he comes back to Earth, he's not under the full control of the god of death. So he's kind of like this wandering soul now. He's got these powers. He can be resurrected. Like, even though he's already dead, say you cut off his head, or you shoot him or blow him up, he resurrects himself. So
cool.
He's pretty much immortal, and he also has the power to resurrect the dead, which is a pretty crazy superpower. You have to go back to the Bible, I think, to find the first case of that. So he's a hero, right? He's using the powers to help people out, not to gain souls for the god of death. So, but the storyline's playing out, right? We got to see what happens and where it all ends up. But he's definitely out to do good, not bad. But he's one of these haunted, tortured heroes, which I love so much. Like, I'm a big fan of the Incredible Hulk TV show. We're talking about influences. I've always loved the idea of David Banner, where he's a tortured scientist.
Yeah.
He's cursed, he turns into a monster. He doesn't want that. He's afraid he's going to kill someone. But I love me some tortured, angsty heroes. Kind of like the guy from the new Godzilla film, Godzilla Minus Zero.
Yeah.
The pilot guy. I mean, talk about tortured and racked with all kinds of internal emotional issues. So,
and then I mean,
that answered the question a little bit.
Yeah, and Hav has also talked in the past on the show about Steve Ditko, because he's been, kind of like fortunate enough, and I think they've been fortunate. The Ditko family's been fortunate enough as well to befriend Hav, and Hav has made multiple works about Steve Ditko, and Ditko's a perfect example of that too, right? Like the
tortured hero.
Yeah,
you see this pin I have?
Oh,
it's Mr. A's calling card, right? His signature character.
I love that.
Black and white. His nephew Mark gave it to me when I saw him last time.
Oh, that's awesome.
I guess they're making these. So he goes, here, you get a Mr. A calling card. So yeah, I just happened to have it on me.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's always why, like, those kind of more angsty characters, even like thinking about the X-Men, like part of why Wolverine was always like super appealing and interesting, I think, to people, not just the fact that he was super powerful, but it's all that angst,
Yeah.
And like back history and stuff.
And Nightcrawler.
Yep.
Yeah, Nightcrawler. I mean, that's initially what appealed to me for like Spider-Man, and a lot of those characters is like, as a teenager, I was like, you feel as you're getting stronger and faster and whatever, you kind of, it's a bit of a change, right? You feel kind of those powers, but then you're also kind of trapped, like your parents are still telling you what to do and teachers are still telling you what to do. And there's like a lot of that kind of, I don't know if I was that self-aware at the time, but like I just remember really like relating to that. And as you kind of, move from like 10 to 12 into like 14 to 16, then, Deadpool starts making more sense, and, Wolverine wandering around just, raging, get all that testosterone in there. It's an interesting thing to kind of relate to, as you're growing those
Yeah.
I
different
think you're right,
characters and
Corey.
stuff.
Though, like as a kid, like a 10 or 12-year-old kid, like we all are when we're starting out. Yeah, we're not probably identifying those
Right.
things so much, but
Yeah.
you relate to whatever character you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Yeah.
same issue he does, they do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's like if Spider-Man's struggling with stuff, you're like, okay, he knows
Yeah,
what's
right.
going on.
Yeah. He understands.
And similarly,
He
like El
gets me.
Muerto is like kind of a beautifully goth comic. The Manga Muerto is like a much more kind of friendly version. But
yeah, he has no angst. It's just
yeah.
like, hey, I'm cool, man. I got a giant robot. What do you got? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
So I was gonna actually bring that up, the Gigantor and the giant robot. So you were mentioning like you loved Gigantor, and then you're like, how could I do like a Gigantor kind of story with El Muerto? And I'm kind of curious, like, first off, like, what was it that you loved about Gigantor, and then what was it that you kind of incorporated from Gigantor in your own work?
Well, so was probably maybe the senior member here of the group. I mean, some of you probably remember, but as a kid, anime is the biggest thing in the world right now, right? For most kids.
Yeah.
We had anime too, though. We had the first anime. We had Speed Racer and Gigantor and Kimba the White Lion. Those are the three I remember as a kid. And then Battle of the Planets just a little later. But yeah, I don't. Again, like talking about being a kid. I don't know if I was a kid when I was a kid. I'm looking at Gigantor Speed Racer, and I 100% realize, oh, this is a Japanese product. But at the same time, you look at the credits and like, oh, okay, it looks like, Again, as a kid, maybe I didn't think about it much, but
Yeah.
I just love the idea. Like the idea of you're a kid with this giant robot. Like, oh, how lucky kid, man. And then back then, because the standards were different, the robot may throw the car full of criminals off the bridge. Like, oh, five guys just died, but it's okay, kid. You can watch it back then.
I love that.
The same creator of Gigantor, Mitsutaro Yokoyama, he created the concept for the TV show Johnny Sacco and his flying robot.
Nice.
The live action. It's the same thing. It's a kid with a watch. He controls a giant robot. I was watching those recently. Man, that show is so... Like, the kid picks up a machine gun and is mowing down the terrorists, the criminals. Like, nobody raises an eyelid.
I love it. There's something about the style from that too that's just so appealing.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
If you guys
it's
haven't seen
kids, but it's almost
Gigantor,
like kids made it because it's so innocent.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's so great. Yeah,
I gotta check it out. Sounds like.
Yeah. Johnny Sacco
just
and his flying robot.
yeah. Oh, all amazing.
Jim
they
Luhan has a question.
Yeah.
What music artist would you use to score the current book you're working on? Like, who captures the mood?
Jim, yeah, a music question for Mr. Lujan. Well, the book I'm doing right now, so I'm working on the third El Muerto story, The Man from Mictlan, which I can share the pages. I inked this page earlier today. Yeah, I'll just pull it up. Pentel pocket brush pen for the inking and some micron pens. And then I started doing this one earlier before the podcast, but I go out and put it down so I could. So yeah, I blue line pencil, then I go in with regular pencil and sharpen it, and then I ink it. But to answer Jim's question, I mean, my playlist doesn't change much between every Muerto episode. It's soundtrack scores, particularly Danny Elfman, John Carpenter, of course. My gosh. Don't forget the guy's a master composer as well as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Ennio Morricone, a lot of the classic Godzilla scores. So I love film score because there's no lyrics, so I'm not having to be distracted. At the same time, I do like playing a lot of music, and yeah, I mentioned earlier I play a ton of 80s, Cure, Depeche Mode, the Smiths. I mean, man, the Smiths isn't El Muerto. I don't know what is. As far as like the angst and the mood and such.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, I'll play those all the time, no matter what book I'm working on. It's just like comfort food,
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the Smiths is definitely one of those things that for me always has like a second and then third and fourth life. Like as I get older, I always
Right.
have like a year where I'll forget about the Smiths, and then like a year after that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. How did I not listen to this for the last year? It's so good. And I agree that like the vibe of it does fit El Muerto as well. Um, so okay, I am kind of curious because like on this topic, like what influences your art, and kind of talking about like you being like, okay, Gigantor kind of mixed with El Muerto. Let's do like a manga of El Muerto. There are some people out there who would be like, oh man, how can you make anything that's like slightly derivative, right? Or
Oh
something
my
like that,
gosh.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious if maybe you could address like cartoonists out there that might have that feeling. Maybe we can all get into this topic of how we come up with ideas and influences in general, because I think we're all probably going to have a very similar answer to that, especially to that. Like if somebody was critical of that kind of thing. Why don't do you want to kind of kick that off, Hav? Like,
Yeah.
what's your idea on how ideas come to be in the first place? And yeah, let's go from there.
Well, I think if anyone who knows anything about art, all all art is to so many degrees influenced by other art. You know, I mean, take Superman and Batman, like the two prototype heroes,
Yes.
and you can put 1,000 characters under each one. Like, okay, these are all the Superman types, the super powerful, godlike guy flying around, and then here's the dark urban guy character, blah blah blah. So, and that's just comics, but you've seen one great cop movie, French Connection, and then you've probably seen 500 other great cop movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying everyone is influenced by just the one film, but Godfather, how many gangster films? You get influenced by things. I mean, you get influenced by looking at a flower outside your window.
Yeah.
So no one's gonna criticize you for like, hey, you made a story. You gotta go look at a flower to make your story up. It's like, well, the idea didn't come from like absolutely nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I always feel like, to me, like if somebody's out there and like, let's just hypothetically, like, let's say you're like a huge fan of Pokemon or something, right?
Right.
Because, and like, if somebody's out there, they're a huge fan of Pokemon and they have this idea and they're like, man, wouldn't it have been cool if Pokemon had done this? Right. Weirdly enough, that could be the seed of like a crazy cool story that nobody's told before. That could be not derivative, but it's like a seed,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us as creators,
I
even musicians too, where you like a band and you'll be like, man, wouldn't it be cool if like I could have a band that was like Zeppelin mixed with, the Dead Kennedys or something, and it's like, and then you think of that and you can write songs that are kind of like get in that mode and kind of create something new. Corey, you were about to chime in. What's up?
I was just gonna say it's funny that you bring up Pokemon because I don't really care about Pokemon, but I just read a really cool series where this guy's friend dared him to write a book based on the two things he hates the most, and so he chose the Roman Legion and Pokemon, and that series is legit. Like it is like if everybody in the Roman Legion had the ability to like call on like kind of sprite powers, and some of them have fire ability and water ability, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool, but it was based on this whole thing of like a pretty much a lift of those two things. And then he's like, what happens when you mix them, and how would they act, and how would they train, and what would war be like? It was a cool series. it's a good jumping off point to be like, what it would be cool if they did that, or what would happen if they, that type of thing.
Yeah. I did when I worked for the game company, we had a Pokemon style fighting game. And so it's kind of like, oh, we want to do a game like Pokemon, but the challenge is, okay, so what do we do differently? What do we try to improve on? What changes can we make?
Mm-hmm.
And it took place a little more of a sort of a medieval kind of fantasy style setting and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fun to do that, because I mean, concepts are great, and it's like, but there's so many different ways you can take it. Like, have you ever like seen like a trailer or something and like, or heard a concept and you're like, oh man, that is so cool, and you go to see it and you're let down, and he's like,
yeah,
well, what if they would have done this? They could have went this direction. So I know some people, they'll have an idea or something, and then a movie will come out or something, and then there's like, man, they stole my idea or they got to my idea first. But everyone tells stories differently, and there's always a unique way to tell it, even if the general concept is the same. Because I think I'm pretty sure there's probably other kind of kids fighting zombies things out there, but anytime I watch them, I'm like, first I'm getting nervous, like, oh man, is this totally like mine? I watch it, it's like totally different.
Yeah. Well, and even if it becomes similar, it's like, I think that there's always a uniqueness when you I think this like definitely is apparent in Hov's work, where if you're being really authentic in what you're doing and you're making stuff that you're authentically interested in, I think there's something that just kind of happens there that makes it stand out.
It becomes its own thing after your initial influence or your jumping off point.
Yeah,
I think if it's good, it becomes its own thing, because now I'm also focusing on things I want to bring into it, or maybe I'm bringing things from other things too, from music, from film. So we'll start off as a Pokemon spin-off.
Yeah.
And then like Corey said, if you're not into Pokemon at all, when you're enjoying the product, whatever this mystery product is,
totally,
you won't even know that it's based on Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Well, and there's also that old saying, like the idea that like there's like 5 basic stories and they were all told by Shakespeare, right? And so we're all just kind of cycling through a different version of like some story Shakespeare already did, like, and it's kind of true. And honestly, it's not even a bad thing to be aware of too. But I also think it's cool to me, and I think this is the fun thing about Manga Muerto, is I think one thing I really admire about you, Hav, is that you have this ability to kind of take an idea like that some people, maybe they made an existing IP and they were like, what if I made this like a manga version, a lot of people would just cast that aside and then just kind of stick with like the same old thing. And the thing I like about your work is quite often you'll have these moments of like, what if, and then you actually pursue it and make it really cool and new. And so I don't know. I guess maybe we could ask about that. Like, like what initially inspired you to kind of take on that challenge when you had that thought of like, like what if we did like a manga El Muerto that's kind of like Gigantor, which is so exciting to me. And then also what made you reach out to Raph? Like,
the collaboration part is good. Well, I don't want to cover the ground again. I just covered there, wanted to do my own Gigantor spin, but I got lost in my own thoughts here.
It's good. I guess I probably asked like 50 questions at once. Let me simplify.
No.
What made you kind of so we talked about a little bit about the Gigantor thing. But what made you reach out to Raphael for really like quick, collaboration? Okay.
The other, like, kind of answer, like, well, why not make up a new character? Why use El Muerto and reinvent him? Because the other thing going into this comic thing 25 years ago, I put in the back of my head is, I looked at Batman, right?
Yeah.
So you have Batman from the comic, and of course you're all going to have your own favorite era of comics, so whatever it is, Frank Miller, Norm Brayfogle, whoever. And then you look at there's Adam West Batman, which is really 100%. It's the same Batman, but really 100% different. And then you look at Frank Miller's Batman, different. Tim Burton. So right away I was like, okay, you can do a character, and you can do a different take on that character.
Yeah.
So when I came up with this Gigantor thing, that's like, well, let me just use El Muerto and just stretch him, bend him, reconfigure him like a Lego toy, whatever. Take them apart, put them back together in this new universe, whatever. So that's what it was. I always like the elasticity of characters, certain characters. Same with Superman. I mean, there's so many different takes on Superman, across different media, and it becomes a different thing. So I that was a challenge I wanted to do. And as far as with Ralph, well, we've been friends for almost forever. At the time, this was around 2000, we were both really getting into manga heavily. Like, we're going to a lot of local stores when there used to be stores.
Yeah.
Local bookstores with manga and anime and stuff like that. So we were both really vibing off the original Gigantor comics and cartoon. So it just seemed like, I told him about the idea. He was so excited. Well, you want to ink it? Because, again, let's match two things together, my style and his style. But both these guys love the original property.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer. And then also it does relieve a little bit on me. Like, okay, all I got to do is think of the story and pencil it. And now it is kind of nice to drop the pages on the inker's desk and I can go back to doing something else. And then as a fan, I get to see this new product that comes out. Like, oh, this is not a Javier comic 100%. It's a Javier Rafael Navarro comic.
Yeah.
So as a creator, it's fun to see that type of thing because I don't collaborate a lot. Most of my books are it's just me, one man bullpen, they call me. And then when it came with Ted Secco, again, this was a collaboration where we brought in his character and he brought some of his villain characters, and then we both collaborated on the plot. So that was a new thing for me. Like, okay, let me talk to somebody else about the plot. And then we came up with the plot. And then it was a great working relationship because I just got to meet Ted maybe a year before. And, just like you guys are comic guys, like when you meet a fellow comic fan, it's amazing. You meet this person for that first minute and you start talking a few things and you already feel like you grew up with them because you watched the same TV shows, you read the same comics, you had the same toys, although you never knew this person, but you feel you played with them with their toys and such. So we hit it off really good. So what we would do, I would work at home and pencil about 5 or 6 pages, and then I go meet Ted halfway point. We met down the South Bay of Los Angeles area at Mitsuwa Marketplace, a Japanese store, shopping center, and there used to be a Mandarake in there. If you guys know Mandarake from Japan, these magical stores that just nothing but manga and anime and toys. So there was a small little branch at this Mitsuwa Marketplace. So we would meet there in the food court, and I would literally be like an editor. I'd show him my pages. Okay, Ted, here's the first 6 pages penciled. And I give it to him, and he'd take it home and ink it. But we talk about the story. We'd have lunch, and then we'd go buy some cool stuff at Manga Doraki. So every couple of weeks, we'd get to meet. So it was a great collaboration. It's not work.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's fun to meet your friend and have a meal and talk stuff and go look at some cool manga afterwards. So
yeah,
it was really sad when it was over,
Yeah. Ted's such a good guy too. He's just a really likable dude. If you guys haven't checked out Ted Secco's work, he's
and again,
huge guy, like built like a tank,
built.
but one of the kindest hearts you'll ever meet,
Oh yeah, he doesn't have that attitude like, oh, look at me.
Yeah.
Super sweet guy. But again, when I'd show up at the place with him, then I get to see the pages. Now they're new pages to me. Now they're inked by his very heavy hand. I don't mean that in a bad way. He's got a very strong, bold inking style.
Yes.
So now it's no longer Javier's pencils, it's Javier and Ted. So I get to go home with some new pages, and then I give him. So it was great. It was a great working method. It's one of my favorite collaborations, working with someone like that. So
I love that. I also like what you were describing about kind of building your own IP and kind of having an idea and going, what would happen if I brought my existing IP into this thing I kind of want to do. I think that's a great idea. And the fact that you mentioned like the examples of like Superman or Batman and like the various iterations that have existed. Yeah, thinking about it, like, your IP, and this I guess just goes for anybody watching. Like, your IP is your IP. So if you want to see a manga version of your character, who better to make it than you, right? That's
right.
great. I think that's wonderful.
A couple of years ago, I after watching that first Spider-Verse animated film.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, it was the Spider-Ham was in there, and I remember him from the comics in the '80s, but I'd forgotten about him.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about like a pig. Wow, someone made a pig Spider-Man, and I go, what would a pig El Muerto look like? So I did this character. He's called Cochito. Cochito is like Spanish slang for little piggy.
I love it.
So it's literally a pig of chubby, kind of like the original Porky Pig from the '40s. Like, he's super fat, super chubby, wubsy cute, and he's got a little tight El Muerto costume with the belly, his belly sticking out under the shirt.
That's awesome.
So it was like an 8-page story. It was in color, and again, it was just a whole spin-off. Like, okay, now there's. So what's the big thing in comics and now the movies, the multiverse? So now there's there's this Manga Muerto multiverse. There's this Cochito. So maybe one day I'll put them all together in a crazy story. But
that's cool.
But again, I could have
it.
created a new character, right? A new pig character. But like, no, to me, it works better if it's people recognize him. Oh, that's El Muerto. He's wearing a Muerto costume, and he's got the white makeup on his pig face.
And I think it's smart too to kind of continue the legacy of the thing you've built. Like I think this is something I always talk to people about too. That I think is cool about the Manga Muerto is I always find it weird when I meet cartoonists who never switch styles at all. And I remember, people have like looked at some of my work and be like, oh, why are you switching styles? Like, why is it like bouncing? And it's like, why not? Like if you can, why not? And I love the idea of doing that also with like an IP where it's like switching styles and maybe even switching, some of the biography and stuff, but it's still the character. And El Muerto is so iconic anyway, he's really recognizable. And like, so it does seem like what a perfect way to do it,
The design. Thanks for that. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, Josh mentioned the design again, coming up with the original Muerto '98. He's got this black mariachi suit. I wanted something very simple.
Yeah.
Okay, well, a mariachi suit already exists. So all I'm doing is putting a mariachi suit on the guy, and I put my own little striping on it, and it's got a skull on the back. But I wanted the character to read Mexican just when people look at him right away. Like, oh, the mariachi suit. They all recognize the short jacket, the tight pants, the boots. So it translates over to whatever version I do of them. They're all wearing that same basic suit. And again, like you said, it keeps it iconic. It's El Muerto, but it's not. It's Adam West, Batman, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like, Adam West so much because like that really just showed me you can really make a character so different.
Yeah.
It's the same character, but it's not. It's fascinating to me about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everybody has their like favorite, generally. Like for me, like with Batman, I'm like I want to go either totally like dark, like like film noir, or I want to go corny Adam West. Like I feel like any in between, I'm just like, yeah. Like I feel like two poles. The
best mixture of those is Lego Batman. That's
true.
Maybe the most accurate. How as you're talking, I started like brainstorming. I think it's such a fun thing because like everything that you're talking about, it makes all other creatives in the conversation be like, oh, or you could do this, or you could do this. And that's what I started to do. And that's why I was like, no, you just talk. But I have a question. Have you ever read any Terry Pratchett books, like the Discworld stuff?
No, I have not.
Okay. The only reason I bring it up is it takes place in this Ankh-Morpork city, and it's on a flat Earth. This is way before the whole flat Earth thing. But anyway, and it's total satire of like everything. But one of the characters is Death, like the anthropomorphized version of Death, right? But he's the death of humans. And at one point in time, he starts to like break down. And he meets pieces of himself that have been anthropomorphized, and so there's like a death of rats and a death
Oh,
of sheep and a death
right,
of plants, or whatever.
right.
Anyway, the death of rats is hilarious, but like I was thinking, like it'd be interesting in your comics if like the pig version was like, was from like a different deity, like a pig deity, and you had like a whole pantheon that was
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right.
animal based. I don't know. That's what I love about the world that you built. It's like it feels really fun to play with. Like it just feels like, oh yeah, it could be like this or like this. Anyway,
Well, that's exactly what those old Spider-Ham comics were. Yeah, there was an
yeah,
animal version of J. Jonah Jameson, Doc Ock.
right.
I like that concept of there's a death of humans, but there's also a death deity for shoes, fish. That concept
Yeah,
just blows me away. I never thought about that, like an actual specific deity for whatever it is.
yeah. I'll have to find because there's like 30 something books within the Discworld series, but
Wow,
I'll have to
prolific
find the
author.
one. I'll have to find the. Yeah, he was awesome. He collaborated with Neil Gaiman on Good Omens. So Neil
Yeah.
Gaiman and Terry Pratchett
Oh,
wrote Good Omens together.
okay, I know that property.
And Pratchett's like extremely funny and witty in his writing, and yet,
And
I think what
super
was the
dry.
quote that you gave Corey
Oh,
about Pratchett? Like,
because at one point in time, Neil Gaiman was trying to get him to calm down because he was mad, and he turned towards Neil, who's much younger than him, and he said, "Never discount my rage; it fuels all of my art."
Oh, that's a whole other topic. I love that.
Yeah,
but yeah, actually, honestly, we should. Okay, for the future, let's have Hav on the Rage Against the Machine episode of
oh yeah,
Artcasters, where we can talk about rage as fuel.
Rawr.
I'd be
And
down.
we'll be raging the whole
I'm a
episode.
very
You know
I'm a
what?
very
You know what?
peaceful person that never rages, so I don't know if I have anything to say with that.
I'll save it. I'll save more of this talk for that episode. But I do have another character I did a few years ago. I did just one issue called Maniac Priest,
Yes, I remember that.
and what that was my it's my rated R book, right? Words and violence and all that. It's Death Wish, right? Charles Bronson, Death Wish.
Yeah,
Vigilante movies, The Executioner by Don Pendleton, the paperback series. It's about this young priest. His sister is horribly slaughtered. Her and her children are killed. And the young priest goes to church one day and he's angry at God. Why could this happen? He's angry. And then next thing you know, there's this hulking, like 7-foot tall priest, wearing a priest outfit, but his face is all scarred up, red eyes. He's on the streets of it's got to be 1980s LA. He's on the streets of LA killing criminals, with biblical quotes. And it's alluded to very heavily in this. Though I make sure that there'd be no question. I hope not. The young priest kind of turns into him. It's almost like the Hulk. It's actually more like the Shazam. It's like Billy Batson.
yeah,
Boom, turns into this other character, the
I love
maniac
that.
priest.
And that's a great character name for a Charles Bronson style. Like, I mean, that's just great.
Well, Maniac Cop.
Priest. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Rest in peace. I forgot Larry Cohen. I think he created that movie series, Maniac Cop. And I go, one day I was sitting around thinking, Maniac, because I watched the Maniac Cop films. And I go,
Yeah,
Maniac Cop, Maniac. What else could be Maniac? Maniac Chef, Maniac Priest hit me like lightning bolt.
yeah,
And I do that a lot. I do mix a lot of religion
yeah.
with my work. I guess that came from being a young kid reading Frank Miller's Daredevil. It was like, oh, I don't know, you can make a character be Catholic. As a young teenager, I didn't know you could do that, and Frank did it. And
That's a
it
real
made that
nice
character
layer.
it made that character very bizarre and angsty because Frank would say, only a Catholic would at night beat the hell out of the criminals, and during the day he defends them in court.
Yeah, right.
So, and then Kirby would always touch on biblical, religious themes in his work.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
All the time.
I think
and
it's
he mixed it up
smart.
with history and evolution, and it's a whole nother show, right? Kirby you talk about influence. Kirby didn't care. He would mix Adam and Eve and then space monsters in the same
Yep.
in the same story.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, and I, you know, like a good example of that too is like, you know, it doesn't even have to be like like with superhero stuff. I think that's how all stories happen. It's like I think Jacob's Apartment for me was like I had a rough idea, and then I was like, well, I'll use like the very loosely, the plot structure of like Romeo and Juliet, and just so the beats of the story, even though it's not this big epic story, is pretty much just pulling that, and that kind of informed like, okay, well, the characters have to be polar opposites,
Right.
right? Like from opposite houses, and like, you know, you can kind of like you can draw inspiration from a lot of things. And I love the way you're kind of describing it too, because I do think a lot of the time as an artist, allowing yourself to chase those moments of wouldn't it be cool if to kind of spark like what could eventually be like seriously like, you know, a decade, 2 decades, in Javier's case, you know, more than that, like worth of work and a legacy. And it can all stem from, you know, I mean, if we think about our medium, it's like, you know, Ditko was like, what if somebody got bit by a radioactive spider? You know, it's like it's a weird idea, and it's like, but that all stems from like a basic idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a person who could have the abilities of a spider? You know,
Yeah.
and I think chasing those ideas is really important because it can lead to really cool things. I want to highlight really quick for
Hey,
our
really quick, Josh.
audience the
Really
fair
quick,
prices on your Kickstarter, but let's go ahead, huh?
Well, I want to compliment you because on Jacob's Apartment, it's a perfect example we talked about earlier. Because I read that, I really loved it, and I didn't realize I'm not a big Shakespeare guy. I didn't realize it was loosely based on. So that's on you know Romeo and Juliet. So that's what we're talking about. Yeah, you based it on something.
Yeah,
But, you know, I wasn't out there calling you out on it because I didn't realize it. I just
Yeah.
enjoyed that story, that relationship story. So that's
Yeah.
a great example of being influenced, using something that already existed, and then spin it around your own way. So
yeah, and I think like most people, if they check out El Muerto, it's like it doesn't feel like anything else. Like it feel like, you know, obviously when Hobbs pitching it, he's going to be like, you know, it's like the Smiths, it's like
right,
these
right.
things, but it's like it's very much got like a Javier Hernandez identity to it, like and feeling. Um, but it's like, but yeah, there's these roots of like other stuff, and I think just again like if you guys are out there like kind of chasing the great idea, a lot of the times it is just that moment of, huh, wouldn't it be cool? Like literally, it can be that. Or like Hav was explaining with like the character design, like this El Muerto is so iconic, but a lot of that starts with like those simple thoughts of like, well, I want them to be identifiable, you know, and like
Yeah.
so, and I want it to represent this, so it's got to have that. Like, just finding, you know, those pursuing those things, I think is like half the fun of the creative process.
You know, about 15, 20 years ago when I was starting out, I met this other artist online, Colin Panetta, and he was doing a comic, and he had this term he would just throw out. I never really asked him about it, but he called it personal genre fiction. Is what he's
I like
doing, is what
that.
I'm doing, you know. And I thought about it, I go, oh, he must mean like me. I'm doing a supernatural story, haunted hero. Oh, that's been done before. Yeah, but imbuing it, embedding it with so much personal things and things from other places. Now it's become this personal genre.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a horror genre, supernatural hero, but no, it's Javier's own personal El Muerto genre. And like, you know, Scott's doing his own zombie thing. Yeah, there's 100 zombie stories out there, but you look what he's doing, whatever he's been influenced by, but whatever he puts into it, now it's just Scott.
yeah,
Like that book is just Scott. That's Scott's personal genre fiction. So I think that's such a brilliant word. I never asked him if that's what he meant by it, but he must have.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's a good description. In theory, we should all be building our own worlds, you know, and
Exactly.
bringing people along. And the fun thing about our worlds is they're informed by everything, you know, and what makes it unique, you know, is those things of like, well, I mean, Javier was one of the first artists I ever saw like pulling a lot of Aztec mythology and kind of mixing it into like a narrative building, but then like also he likes the Smiths, and so he's pulling the Smiths into it, and like, you know what I mean? It's like it's got a Tim Burton vibe to it. It's got like these different pulls of like ideas and concepts, and what comes out of it is just this really cool, Javier Hernandez creation, which we should all support. And speaking of, also, who doesn't like giant robots? Okay. But let's show this too, because I wanted to highlight, okay, you guys, like, for a Kickstarter, these are really good prices, like reasonable prices and nice tiers. So you can, for $20, get a print copy of Manga Muerto. It's you can, for $30, you get like a Tetsujin 28 Gigantor combo. Like,
And those
there's the
prices
retailer
include
pack.
shipping.
What's
Those
up?
prices include shipping.
That includes shipping. I mean, that's insanity. Like that's awesome, and that's fair. And I think we should all support this. You can get original art for like $300. That's really decent.
And there's a digital PDF version, because a lot of us don't like, not me, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like to collect things. That's fine. We got a digital $5 version for you.
You can get the back cover art. I mean, it's pretty cool. There's a beautiful Ted Secco pinup. And Ted Secco's
someone already claimed the Secco pinup already.
Ooh, okay. There's no longer a Secco pinup. But I just,
and
let's show that.
I did ask Ted. I go, Ted, I appreciate this, the pinups in the book, but would you mind if I offer this as a reward? He's like, no, go ahead if it helps out. And yeah, somebody snatched it up. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. So yeah, so hop in there, especially on the originals, right? Because those will disappear quickly. Like we,
the original cover art.
And it just looks super fun. It looks like a really fun story. You got giant robots crashing into buildings. I mean, yeah, this is great. And you've got Javier's great dialogue. That's one of my favorite things. Like all good superhero comics, Javier's El Muerto has a lot of heart and story behind it. It's not just action. There's a lot of meaning and depth and like Jav mentioned, like angst behind that stuff. I love that. That's actually a really good point from Jim. One thing he loves about Jav's work is the efficiency in storytelling, but at the same time showcasing mighty strong artwork. I agree.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jim. And you know what he put there, I've always thought, not that I'm great, but like, okay, I got to do a story. I got to be very, very clear. I want to be very clear what's happening in every, so the reader doesn't get lost. At the same time, and I don't mean this as a diss against Kurt Swan, because Superman artist, I used to not like him when I was younger because I thought it was very boring. But now I appreciate him. But I want to make it super clear, but I don't want it to be boring. So it's like driving automatic, driving stick shift. You got to give and take. So keep it clear, but try to make the panels, when they have to be, dynamic and bold, and do a full splash page. Kick it up in a lot of spots, but also try not to lose the reader, their eye line as they're going through the panels, the page.
Yeah, I've seen, and I agree 100% with this too, because like Jav's work flows, like there's no confusion when you're reading these comics, and to that, just to show the importance of that too, I've seen like incredibly beautiful comic pages on comics that I'm not a big fan of because I can't follow the page. Like it's beautiful, but I have no idea what's happening. The line of action's all over the place. Like, it's impossible to follow. And it's like, if you lose clarity as a cartoonist, like our number one job is storytelling. So,
exactly.
If you can't understand the story, it's like, man, that better be some amazing art. Because like, if I can't understand what's happening, I don't know if I want to turn through multiple pages of it. And I love that.
It's almost like they spent their time drawing the panels out of sequence because, like, oh, I want to draw this cool shot and this.
Yeah.
But you're right; it's got to flow from the beginning. That's why, for me, people will say, "What's your favorite part of the process?" I go, "Well, I can't have a favorite part because the whole comic is." But to me, the most delicate important part is the rough draft.
Yes.
Just I scribble out. And by the way, I don't write scripts for myself. This might shock some people. There's no scripts for me. They're just I think about the story for weeks or months, and then I get the copy paper, which we used to call typing paper, and I draw the first page out, just scribble it out, panel by panel, blah, 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 and I do the whole book, whether it's a 5-page story, 20 or 120-page book. And then once the rough draft is done, I edit it. I may throw 5 pages out. I may redraw 2 pages. I may add 5 pages in the middle of this. Then I redraw it on the large paper, which I showed you earlier. But getting the story down visually, for me, again, some people write a script. That's fine. That's the most important thing, because once I have the flow right, and I know what's going to look like, then I can redraw it. And then when I redraw it, like this page on the rough draft, these 3 panels may look different originally. Maybe when I got down to doing this, I don't know. You know what? I want to highlight each character separate, whatever. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's my rough draft. The rough draft's not really meant to be shown. We get wrapped up so much. All of us artists, we love process, and we live for that. It's our religion, I guess. But all that really matters in the end, honestly, is the book on the shelf.
Yep.
Or on the tablet, whatever. But it's really only the audience doesn't care. We do, because they don't care about the rough draft or the the outline or the plot or the notes or the angst that the guy had for months trying to figure out the storyline. Show me the story. Show me the episode. Let me play the video game. If I don't like it, I don't like it. If I like it, I like it. I mean, that's the sad truth, right? We spend hours slaving away on our work.
Yep.
Hundreds of hours to put a graphic novel out, and it could arrive with a thud once you put it out.
Yep.
The world doesn't owe you a favor, my friend Raphael says. That makes a lot of sense. And another lesson for the younger people starting out there, right? Your mom will probably like the book because she loves you. That's fine. But you may put it out and you may not get the audience. You may not get the audience right away. You got to keep looking for your audience, which is why I do so many shows. If you follow me online here in LA, there's so many. I'm not talking about comic shows. I'm talking about shows at libraries, art festivals, little mini comic cons, book signings. Yeah. I have to find my audience as an independent guy, independent publisher. And I like getting on. Comics is so solitary. I mean, you are literally there. Look, Scott's right there working in the studio right now. We're all working on our own for the most part for months and weeks and whatever. Yeah. So once the book's out, I do like to get out to do. I do love doing shows. I do love meeting people. I'm one of those artists. No, I love to meet people. Hey, this is my book. Check them out on the table. I take credit card, whatever. So that's for me. That's part of the process. I know a lot of artists don't like to go out. Don't like to, no. I just want to put it out, or the publisher puts it out. But from the beginning, I know it's the hustle. You guys know this stuff. You all.
Yeah. I love that, and I love that as like a kind of letting people know too, because whenever I've taught art, like that's always a hard one to kind of explain to people, because they'll be like, well, I want it to say this, and I want to they're describing all this like complexity, and it's like, I'm not seeing any of that. Wow. You got to show me that, because you're not going to be there when the person reads the comic, right? Like you're not going to be at the comic shop 9 times out of 10 when somebody picks it up and reads it, or even if you sell it to them at a convention, like, hey, they're going to go read it.
Right.
You can't just sit next to them being like, oh, on that panel, what I meant to and so it really is like Javier was describing, where it's like, you're putting in hours of isolation and work, on it, in hopes that it's clear and hopefully connects with people, But that's always a hard one to teach. Yeah.
And working in isolation, so people who don't know, it's not a sad thing. It's like, oh, poor guy, he's sitting there all by himself drawing. No.
It's addictive.
For me, it's euphoria. Like, it's just me, my music.
Yeah.
And my pencil drawing and laying down each brick piece by piece. That is fantastic. There's nothing sad or lonely about working in isolation. Not at all. Far from it. But again, I like to get out. Once the book's ready, hey, let me go to the convention and pile up the car and drag my stuff across the parking lot and set up my table. I mean, open for business, folks. Here we go.
I love it. I think Manga Muerto will be really fun if you guys have already gotten El Muerto. Like, I think this will be a nice addition to it. If you haven't gotten El Muerto, you should, like, I have a link to Javier's link tree down
Yes.
there, and you guys need to get that. I mean, that's a legendary comic at this point. So,
Well, they're on
definitely make
Amazon
sure.
too. The El Muerto graphic novels are on Amazon, so
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's the thing that I was gonna kind of ask about on that. You were talking about kind of for you, like, the most important stuff happens at the rough. I totally agree with you, and I pre-script stuff, but I feel like the most important part when making a comic is like that early part of like translating like an idea to like actual moments, in a sketch. That's the writing part, in my opinion, as a cartoonist, right?
right.
Why is that? Like, do you want to kind of get into that?
Because, and who knows how this works, right? We all see our stuff in our head,
Yeah.
and I can't even describe what it looks like in your head, or Corey said it, or my head. But once you draw it on paper, that's the first time you literally see it, what it looks like, or what it's going to look like. I see the two characters sitting there, and I see the second panel. Oh, now I see his close up of his face. In the third panel, I see she walks in the room and whatever. Like again, it's one thing to say I see it in my head, okay, whatever that means. But once it's on, I can pick up the paper and look at it, and pick up page 2 and look. So I'm like, oh, that's what it's going to look like. That's what the story is taking shape as. That's I think a big excitement about doing a rough draft. Because even if you write it, maybe it's different. Maybe a writer would say, no, once I write it out, then it's physical. I see it.
I don't feel like that, but
literally drawings of characters in a story for me to say, okay, now it's taking its first step out of the womb, I guess. You want to get all dramatic.
yeah. And what's interesting, like that I'm noticing is like when I work with a writer, there's an interesting translation that has to happen from that writing to the thumbnail. Because quite often, like in a script, and I bet this happens in film a lot too, where in a script, somebody won't have really thought out like the dimensional aspect of what they're asking to happen. And sometimes what they're writing is visually like impossible. It's like, wait a minute, how are they going to grab that with their left hand if they're turning this way? Like that doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the beauties of the thumbnailing process, even if you're translating someone else's script,
right?
Is like, and I think that's why people do a lot of storyboards for film too, because you really start working out the realities of those actions. Because like once you're laying it out there, what maybe works in text it just may not work. Like, yeah.
I haven't really worked with writers much, but I've seen scripts like they'll give me to look at it. And it's like you said, exactly. Like, you can't have these three things happen in the first panel because he can't sit down at the same time he's reaching up to get the coffee. At the same time he's walking out. Like, how do you not see that? Like, so you have to draw it out for them.
Yeah, that's always a thing to like, and I think that's why all of us, like our first comic, we're like, I'm gonna do it so much better than every comic I've ever seen, and then you sit down and you're like, this takes forever, like, and I think that's part of why is like, every action in a story is a panel. It's like, so even if you want like a subtle beat of a moment where somebody's like wiping their nose, like that, and that's an action you want to show, that's 2 panels now. Like, you've got like that and then before. And so it's like, it really does make you start thinking about efficiency. And so when Jim was saying like Hav is efficient with his work, that's a huge compliment for a cartoonist. Like if you're efficient, that's good. Like, that means you're clear with your actions and stuff. And that's not an easy task. That takes years to develop.
It's funny though, but then you look at manga, like I'm currently reading this, about this 12-volume set called Vagabond. It's a samurai story. I read 6 volumes so far. In Japanese manga, it's almost the opposite. They could, that nose wipe might take 3 or 4 panels or a page or 2. They stretch it out because that's why they have like a 12 or 30 volume saga
Yeah.
at the end, where we have maybe 4 or 5 graphic novels. So in manga, a lot of it is stretched out, the actions and the moments. Where in American comics, for whatever reason, it started out, doing 22-page floppies. Like, okay, you got to get the whole thing done.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting talking about how much time do you have for a moment in a comic versus a manga.
Yeah, or like a longer format,
Right.
Yeah, because I enjoy that. Like, I've mentioned the reason I brought up the word nose wipe thing is like Chris Ware is one of my favorite artists, and he literally has like 5 panels where the character's sitting, like Jimmy Corrigan is sitting at a restaurant and just wiping his nose, and that's it for like a whole page of like
Right.
every other. And I think that's something that's really cool about comics too is, and again, this is where like, this tied to kind of our beginning about influences and how like whatever your influences are, like you're gonna shine from your work. It's kind of similar with that, with pacing and timing too, where your choice to kind of edit and show different frames and panels and pace out your story is really going to define, the vibe of your art. Like what kind of song are you playing? Is this like like, is this crazy just fast paced rock and roll, or is this
Right.
like a slow moment? And I think I will say, like, also El Muerto has a lot of that too, where it'll be action and then it'll be a lot of drama
Right.
and backstory too, and like really it kind of has a flow to it, like a song.
I was telling my friend a couple of years ago, I was talking about storytelling and talking about Gilbert Hernandez, Love and Rockets, Hyman. And I go, I love stories that they do. They're just people stories.
Yeah.
Sitting there talking, getting a relationship, out of a relationship. And then my friend goes, well, why don't you do a story like that? I go, well, because I like that, but I also like supernatural gods and demons and
Yes.
action and violence and, in a story. So I do both. So like, thanks you mentioned. So there is a lot of quiet moments. Talking like the new book I'm working on, The Man from Miklon. It's the 3rd graphic novel. The first one was about 120 pages. The second one was about 115, maybe 20. This one, the rough draft, 160. And it's like, ooh, is that too long of a book? But this book is the biggest one so far because El Muerto Diego gets a new girlfriend. There's like 10 new characters in the story. There's like 5 or 6 criminal gangster hitman guys, 2 new gods, 2 other Aztec gods, the girlfriend, this other character, this Mexican curandero, medicine man. So, and then I like doing the moments where he meets the girl and the relationship starts developing. Like I'm not going to rush that in one panel.
Yeah.
Because we've all dated, the courtship and first you're friends and then you're more than friends. So I let it play out. There might be 4 or 5 pages where they're driving through Baja and eating. And, I like doing scenes where people are just sitting around eating because that's a very human thing. Years ago when I was working on the El Muerto movie, they're making a movie out of it. I asked my director, like, I didn't write the script. I go, hey, can I do since you're still bouncing your story around for your script you want to write or hire someone to write, can I write up a treatment? And you don't have to use it, obviously. You're making the film you want to make based on my job. So I wrote up this story treatment, and remember he told me, wow, there's a lot of scenes in this thing where people are eating. I didn't realize, like, yeah, because when people are talking, that's what we do when we sit and talk with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, sit there with coffee, let's go have a pizza. I just thought it was funny he said that. I took it as a compliment. It was more like,
Yeah.
maybe
I love
I
that.
couldn't do that, but
Yeah.
the people scenes are so important for me.
Yeah. That's actually a really good tip on the eating thing too. Because thinking about it, it's like one of my favorite cartoonists is Derek Kirk Kim, and in Same Difference, he has like a 5-10 page sequence of people just eating at this cool restaurant with a fish tank, and then he plays with like the perspective from like behind the fish tank, so you're seeing fish kind of floating in front of the people when they're talking. It's brilliant, but it's like, yeah, I think that's what's so striking about it, is so human. But it's so relatable because, like, yeah, haven't we all had like great conversations at dinner and stuff?
I mean,
I
4
think that's
pages of
brilliant.
people just talking, that can get boring. Like just the 4 heads
Yeah.
talking. But if someone's mixing their coffee and then the other person's pulling a slice of pizza and it's all gooey, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or like that fish tank is a great
Yeah.
prop. Then show the fish for a couple of panels while someone.
Yeah.
So it's just to break it up, and also my memory of always having meals with people as we're talking.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I also think that's good advice too, in the sense of that can help avoid it being a floating head thing,
Yeah,
because you're giving them an activity to do. So it's like the old screenwriter thing, right? If you're going to have a couple have an argument, maybe one of them's doing dishes, right? Like there's like some activity usually happening in people's lives, Yeah.
Right. For the most part, yeah.
I love it. Well, cool. So Manga Muerto is up on Kickstarter. If you guys haven't supported it, check out Manga Muerto. There's a link tree. Like, there's a link to both Javier's Kickstarter, direct link, but there's also a link tree in the show notes that you can access all of Jav's stuff. And definitely make sure you support this on Kickstarter. It's pretty close. It's pretty close to fully funded. We're
almost there. We get 2 more weeks. It ends February 9th. And since we mentioned the classic El Muerto stuff, Kickstarter's got this great thing too. So you can pick any level you want, a reward, and they have these things called add-ons. So you could go through the add-ons, and all my previous El Muerto books are available for you to just click on it, pay the price for that book. I'll put it in your package with your new Manga Muerto, so you can get caught up on my older work or whatever the Muerto Prime storyline, whatever you want to call it. So I got like 5 or 6 different books you can add to your reward level. So yeah, you can get caught up on El Muerto or try both dishes.
I love it. And yeah, they both have different flavors, but they have a common interest, right? Like a common character. I love the way you described it at the top of, like, you've got Adam West Batman, you've got Burton Batman, like there's different poles. Yeah.
It's the best example.
I love it.
It's so clear and everybody knows it.
It's just so fun to see, and I think we got to kind of support indie comics. Keeman in the chat said, I'm closing in at the finish line with issue 1 of my comic. Congrats, Keeman. You're joining the club. I feel like I think Hav might have said this to me years ago when I published my first comic or whatever, but it's like that is kind of an elite club that not a lot of cartoonists get into, which is you finished one. Good job.
Yeah, talking about it, talking doesn't mean anything.
Yep. I love it.
You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, but like, I had this idea for 10 years on this. Like, well, until you show me, I mean, good luck. But
yeah. And as a creative, how often do you hear that? Boy, do I have an idea. You're like, oh, great.
Get in line, buddy.
Yeah. Cool.
Years ago, a friend of mine, she was being very nice. She met this guy somewhere, and he had an idea. And she said, oh, my friend does comics. Here's his phone number. So one day I try not to answer unknown phone numbers, but what is this? Hello? Hi there. My name is whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I understand you make comic books. So me and my brother have this wonderful idea. Like, So I had to cut him off politely. How'd you get my number, sir? Oh, so-and-so gave it to me. Like, okay, I make a note. Let me talk to her. Right. Well, yes, sir, I do my own work. I don't really publish other people. But I heard that you're really good. Like, I'm sorry. I can't.
Yeah.
Whew. Can't live your dream and mine at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
True.
Especially if yours sucks. Sorry.
I love it. I think
the money that you need to pay me to replace me working on my stuff is a lot. So.
Exactly. You can't afford that, believe me, buddy.
I love it. Right. Okay, well, I am really excited about Manga Muerto. It's about time we kind of wrap up. Is there anything that Scott, you or Corey wanted to get to that we didn't get to with Hav?
I'm just excited to back this Kickstarter. It sounds awesome. It's looking good.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. I think I'm going to back it after we get off this call. So
I'm gonna
me too. Actually, it's been a good reminder. We got to put our money where our mouths are.
For sure.
And guys, thank you. But thank you for 400 episodes of supporting all types of creative people on your shows. I mean, you guys, you deserve a big salute, because I know you guys love talking. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing the show, but still, to do it regularly and consistently. And every time I come on your show, I mean, I feel like even the first time I talked to you guys, I felt like I saw you guys the week before at the burger joint. Like, it's just so very easy, very casual. Nobody's here
Well,
to get you with gotcha
and
questions or anything like that. So.
and likewise, man, 25 years of doing this is rad. That is awesome.
Do what you
That's a
love for
huge-
life, and it's not work. Something like that. Some type of quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's good
honestly,
stuff.
like, I mean, there's a lot you guys can learn from Jav. I mean, Javier also happens to be just like one of those guys. Like every convention I'm at, everyone knows Javi and usually has a good thing to say about him because he's a good dude. So it's like, there's a lot of lessons you guys can learn from Javier. But one of them is get his comics.
Convention.
What's up?
I started my own convention, the Latino Comics Expo.
Oh, yeah.
12 years ago.
Yeah, we had you on to talk about that.
No, for sure.
But yeah, you guys should also support that. The Latino Comics Festival is amazing. I think enjoy this comic, guys. Get it and support Javier. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of bring up or mention?
No. I think we've
Cool.
got a lot of great content out there for the listeners, the aspiring artists, just the casual fan. So do what you want to do, folks, because later on you're going to say, "Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that." So
Amen.
even if you fail at it, even if you stumble, at least you tried it. So
Yep. And you're further than if you didn't. You know.
no,
I love that.
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool. So, well, I guess one last time, Javier, where can people find you? Obviously, they can go to this Kickstarter or the link tree below. Anywhere else they can find your work?
Yeah, I point to people on Instagram. That seems to be such a big favorite spot for everybody. I'm always updating that, especially if you're very visually oriented. You know, just like a quick image of something I'm working on, or something I read, or something I like, or something I ate, or something. So yeah, my Instagram is Javier Los Comics, and also I'm on X/Twitter, Javier Hernandez. I'm always posting on there. So tweet me. Don't X me. Tweet me.
I like it. I think I'm going to borrow that too, because it does bug me saying anything related to X. I like just being like, no, tweet, not X, okay?
We tweet still.
I love it. Okay, Corey, where can everybody find your work?
As always, CoreyKerr.com, and check me out on YouTube. I'm doing some stuff. We'll see how interesting it is, but little painting experiments, and then I'm going to try to deconstruct the equation of how to reverse engineer and analyze professional work so that you can learn how to do it in a systematic way. So
I love it. And, you guys are on my channel. If you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit like. We want a lot of people to watch this episode with Jav. Like, make sure if you guys have been watching, click that like button and maybe share it with a friend. And while you're at it, also share the Kickstarter link. That goes a long way. Because, like, when you're running these Kickstarter campaigns, the ground game's everything. And, like, one little share. Let's say you're watching this and you're like, man, I don't have any money at all, but I want to support Jav. Well, just repost the link for him. That goes miles. With that, Scott, why don't you close us out by, first off, how can people find Young and the Dead? How do they follow cool content? And then lastly, how do they keep track of this wild ride we're on?
Yeah, for Young and the Dead, you can go to my website, circworks.com, where you'll find the current 5 issues. And like I said, I'm wrapping up this 6th and final issue. So I'm excited about that. But that's available up there, as well as digital drawing tools and prints and all kinds of cool stuff. Also, I have a YouTube channel as well. You just search Circworks on YouTube and you'll find it. And I've got a backlog of tons of comic content. Creation content mostly, and then more recently I am kind of delving into Corey talked about reverse engineering artwork, but I've been reverse engineering old nostalgia from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like wax packs, I mail away kryptonite, all kinds of weird stuff like that. And then recreating it and everything myself, and that's the packaging, that's the item, that's everything. So it's fun, and I'm putting a lot of time into those videos, so they're really fun to watch. Check them out. And last but not least, like we were, 401 episodes now. And if you don't want to miss the next episode, you want to join our mailing list. And we don't spam you or anything. All we do is usually about 30 minutes or so before we go live. We send out an email letting you know when we're going to be live, who the guest is, and all that stuff, because we're rotating back and forth between our 3 channels. It's pretty. Usually it's on Thursdays, but that can vary. So you don't want to miss an episode. That's the best way to get informed, because YouTube doesn't always notify people. So there you have it.
I love it. Thanks to everybody in the chats. It was just a really fun, active chat. And thanks again, Hav, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And again, congratulations and onward to 500.
Yeah.
Yes, 500, and we'll get to 30th of El Muerto too. All right, guys. Have a good day, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. And again, back the Kickstarter. Being into indie comics only happens because there are indie comics, and there's only indie comics because people support them. So go support Javier's work. All right, guys. Have a good one, and we'll see you on the next stream. Bye.